and welcome all to Movie Hunter, the show that tracks down the quality of all sorts of movies. My name is Hunter, and today in the second episode, our target is 2006's Night at the Museum, produced by 20th Century Fox, 1492 Pictures, and 21 Laps Entertainment, and distributed by 20th Century Fox. Night at the Museum released in theaters first in the US on December 22nd, 2006, and made almost $575 million worldwide on a budget of $110 million. The film was directed by Sean Levy, who would go on to direct 2 of the 3 sequels, and has directed other films such as Deadpool and Wolverine and the 2006 Pink Panther movie. The film was written by Robert Ben Garrett and Thomas Lennon. It was produced by Sean Levy, Chris Columbus, and Michael Barnathan. It was based off the book by Millen Trent called The Night at the Museum. Not sure why they got rid of the first "the" for the movie. The cinematography was done by Guillermo Navarro, the editing by Don Zimmerman, and the music by Alan Silvestri. The film has an ensemble cast, meaning that it stars recognizable actors who all get roughly the same amount of screen time. This cast includes Ben Stiller, Carla Gugino, Dick Van Dyke, Mickey Rooney, Bill Cobbs, Jake Cherry, Ricky Gervais, Robin Williams, Mizuho Peck, Patrick Gallagher, Rami Malek, Steve Coogan, Owen Wilson, and Crystal the Monkey. The film critically did okay, with most reviews being anywhere from positive to mixed. The film was nominated for 9 awards, of which it won 2 of, and it got 3 sequels: Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian in 2009, Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb in 2014, and an animated one called Night at the Museum, Kaamunra Rises Again in 2022 for the streaming service Disney+. The story follows an inventor named Larry who is struggling to stick with any one idea, which makes it difficult for him to keep a steady home life. This makes it difficult for Nicky, his son, to stay with him when he is not with his mom. To change this, Larry gets a steady job as a security guard at the Natural History Museum. The 3 older security guards who he is replacing show him around, but neglect to mention the fact that at night, all the exhibits come to life. Larry freaks out on his first night as he meets the various characters, and the ones who are friendly and the ones who are not. Spoiler, most are not. After this, Larry wants to quit, but after considering his situation, decides to make the best of his position and study up on his history, and do what he can to keep everything together. Many of the events occur with all the different characters, but at the risk of making the summary too long, I'll give the main points. The reason the museum comes to life at night is due to one of the items in the Egyptian exhibit, the tablet of Ar-Kermanra. One night, Larry brings Nick to the museum and finds that the tablet has been stolen by the 3 previous security guards who want it because it gives them youthful energy. Larry reactivates the tablet, but one of the old security guards escapes, meaning that Larry must band the exhibits together on the same team and track him down. A dangerous game, as if any of the exhibits are out at sunrise, they vanish to dust. Luckily, Larry gets the tablet and the exhibits back and keeps his job, ending the movie. The first thing I'd like to touch on, fittingly enough, is the beginning. Unfortunately, this first talking point is not a positive one. The first 20 minutes of the film are all about Larry and his relationship with his ex-wife, and mainly his son, Nicky. Although this conflict of a father trying to make his life better for the sake of his son, who lives part-time with his mother, is a bit of an oddly specific reused concept, such as in Mrs. Doubtfire or Liar Liar, it is nonetheless a compelling one. My criticism here is more so that it takes 20 minutes to get this point across, which is about as long as an entire episode of television, or 2 even, depending on the show. And in those 20 minutes, there isn't any standout scene or funny moments, like in Mrs. Doubtfire or Liar Liar, to keep momentum going, which can cause the film to drag in my eyes. The next 20 minutes are better, especially if it's your first viewing, as it revolves around Larry meeting all the different exhibits that come to life and experiencing which ones are cause for concern and which are his allies. The scenes are fun enough, but I find that it doesn't have much to deliver if you've seen the film before. It's mostly in the spectacle and the anticipation of who or what will show up next, which is fun, but only really the first time you see it. It's mostly Larry seeing one of the exhibits coming to life, having the appropriate reaction, and then going to the next exhibit, repeating the cycle. While we're talking about the negative parts of the film, let's get into my final big criticism so that we can talk about the good parts. I think the biggest dilemma with this movie is that it has too much going on. There are many exhibits that each have their own subplots that Larry must resolve. This causes each subplot to not get a lot of time to shine, and with the first 40 minutes being set up, it leaves about an hour to resolve the subplots, introduce the security guards as villains, and band the exhibits together to stop them, which is not a lot of time. To get this point across better, I'm going to list some of the subplots. Some, mind you. There is a T-Rex skeleton who needs a toy thrown for him. There are miniature figures of cowboys and ancient Roman soldiers and Mayans, but the Mayans don't do much. It's mostly the feud between the cowboys and the Romans. There are 4 Neanderthals who are obsessed with fire, who need to be distracted by it, but also need to be watched to assure they don't burn anything. Also, one of them gets turned to dust because they stay out at sunlight, but that doesn't really go anywhere. There's a wax Teddy Roosevelt who aids Larry and talks to him about greatness, but there's also a subplot where he has a crush on a wax Sacagawea. There is a pharaoh, owner of the tablet that brings the museum to life, who is trapped in a tomb, but is released at the end of the film to aid in bringing together the museum. There is a museum director named Dr. McPhee who threatens to fire Larry after every slip-up. There is a museum employee named Rebecca who is a Sacagawea enthusiast and has an interesting contrast to Larry. Larry's son Nicky is brought along on the final night shown in the film, but doesn't really do anything. There's a stuffed monkey named Dexter who steals Larry's keys and lets everyone out of the museum. There are many more than that, but you probably get the point. All these plots that are rapidly firing are interesting, and it would make the museum feel smaller if they weren't here, which would waste the concept of the movie. But with the beginning being so slow, it makes me wish that less time was spent on that, so that more time could be spent on this. Okay, enough negative talk. Let's get to the good stuff, because I swear this movie is good. The second half of the film is superior in my opinion, as it finally fully dives into the fun concept of having museum exhibits come to life. My only complaint with this part is that it isn't longer. This part is very fun as Larry does a bunch of historic research to learn about the people in the museum and learn about how to deal with them. The one unfortunate thing is that from the admittedly small amount of research I've done, it seems as though the accuracy of these things may be kind of shaky. While that is a shame, it is nonetheless fun seeing Larry overcome these different, insane obstacles and try and get all the historical figures from different eras to get along. I think Attila the Hun is the best example of this. Throughout the movie, he tortures Larry and wants to tear his limbs off. However, Larry learns that he enjoys magic, so he fools him with the magic tricks and distracts him for a little while until he makes a mistake and Attila goes after him again. However, he tries again by targeting his childhood instead and tries to be sympathetic with him, which works and gets him on his side. These things are much more fun. Finding these creative ways to overcome every single obstacle is a good idea, but I really wish it lasted longer. However, the finale starts, and it is also good, though I don't really have much to say on it. Seeing all the characters work together on the same side is fun, and I enjoy the especially creative parts that utilize the plot of the movie, such as when Christopher Columbus works with the Neanderthals to stop one of the security guards. The chase scene is fun, and I'm glad the movie was able to end on this high note. Finally, I'd like to go over 2 of the characters that I thought were especially good and well written, even if they got limited screen time. One of the most interesting and unfortunately most underutilized characters in the film is a museum worker named Rebecca. Rebecca occasionally serves as a friend to Larry in the daytime when he wanders around the museum trying to do research. Something that I thought was an interesting concept that unfortunately didn't get fully realized was the contrast between her and Larry. One of Larry's problems is that he doesn't stick with any one thing. When something doesn't work out, instead of trying to work through the problem, he finds something new. It's not until he is committed to sticking to his job at the museum due to his unfortunate circumstances that he sees the value in persevering through problems. However, Rebecca, being a fan of Sacagawea, tells Larry that she has spent the last 9 years working on an extremely long book about her, but that she has hit a bit of a roadblock and is considering quitting. Larry, however, convinces her not to quit and to continue persevering through the problem, an interesting contrast to his own experience with such things. Unfortunately, that's about as far as the plotline goes, and the only real conclusion we get is at the end of the film, where Larry introduces Rebecca to the live wax figure of Sacagawea, helping Rebecca push through the problem with her book. It would have been nice to see a bit more of Larry realizing he needs to take a bit of his own advice about persevering, but what we did get was nice enough. The other character I'd like to quickly mention is Theodore Roosevelt, or Teddy as he is more frequently called, who, as I briefly mentioned earlier, serves as a helpful ally to Larry and talks to him about greatness. What I love about Teddy, other than the fact that he is played by Robin Williams, is specifically what he tells Larry. He convinces Larry to come back the second night and aids him when he needs it, but also makes him figure things out on his own occasionally. This is because of the thing he tells Larry many times. Some men are born great, others have greatness thrust upon them, which closely resembles a Shakespeare quote rather than a Roosevelt one, but I've already been over that. Teddy is convinced after hearing Larry's story of his quitting that this job at the museum is greatness being thrust upon Larry, and so Teddy doesn't quit on him and pushes Larry to persevere through his struggles, and, as we all know by this point, he does. Overall, I'd give Night at the Museum a 7 out of 10. I'd really like to give it a higher score, but due to its slow beginning and subsequently fast-paced rest of the film, a 7 out of 10 feels more correct, but it definitely is close to that 8 out of 10. I'd still recommend this film, as there is fun to be had. I just don't find it the most rewatchable film ever. However, there is a potential light at the end of this tunnel. As I mentioned at the beginning, the film did get 3 sequels, which I have not seen yet, but do plan to watch and review at some point. If they could work out the problems with the first film and have more fun and creative moments, I see great potential for the sequel to surpass the original, but that is for another day. Well, that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to share any opinions you had on the movie. A new episode releases each week, so stay tuned to see which film I cover next. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.